Welcome, sentient beings from all known universes and beyond. It's time to activate your cranial downlinks and prepare to receive a raft of discussion on a cosmic ocean of science fiction and fantasy topics, interviews with local area genre devotees, and insightful prognostication by our soothsayers of science fiction, our forecasters of fantasy, and any other beings that happen to get caught in our gravity well. This is the Galactic Driftwood Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of Galactic Driftwood Podcast. I'm Bill.
I'm Stu.
I'm Seth.
I'm John.
I'm Jenna.
And Charles.
And on today's show, we're going to be talking about the Christmas demon known as Krampus. And we have a couple of Krampus masks on the table.
I'm sorry, we're going to be celebrating the Christmas figure Krampus.
Okay. You don't see him as a demon. You see him as a hero.
Not the hero we deserve.
Yeah.
All right. We'll be talking about that. We're also going to talk a little bit about Teslacon, which just ended the end of, it was about the middle of November in Madison, Wisconsin. It's a huge steampunk convention where it's kind of a full immersion thing. You go there and for the whole weekend pretend like you're in the 1800s in a steam-infused sci-fi utopia, or maybe dystopia, depending upon your outlook.
Now, your theme this year was the Orient Express, right?
Correct. And murder on the Orient Express. And there was a murder. There was a murder, yes.
What was the actual title of the event? Because each of these has a big...
Murder on the Orient Express.
I thought that they went something different, a little bit more steampunky, but okay.
No, that was it.
That was it.
On the Orient Express.
What was last year's?
What was last year's?
Battle of Britain.
Yeah, Battle of Britain.
Yes. And next year's is going to be War of the Worlds, based on the original H.G. Wells novel. So that should be very interesting. I'm really looking forward to that. So we went this year, and it was a lot of fun. There were more murder suspects than there were people on the train, I think, which was kind of strange. Even Sherlock Holmes, who was investigating the murder, was a suspect.
Of course.
You know.
Well, he is a sociopath. So.
True. But it was a lot of fun. A lot of good.
Sociopath.
Yeah.
Yes. And so Lynn and I picked up some stuff in my hat. I don't know. Can you see my hat on the... You can hand me my hat.
Oh, a sorting hat. Wonderful.
Yeah. It's like a wizard's hat. So see it on the camera. And it's kind of cool. It's got a little... Probably can't see that on the camera, but there's a little thing in here. Like a string thing that you can pull and adjust the tilt of the crook in the hat.
So if you aren't watching if you aren't watching this on YouTube, what Bill has is a very nice kind of red-colored
leather
wizard's hat.
Yeah.
It's very nice, and I'm quite jealous.
Yeah, and then Linda got one too. That's kind of you want to sit there.
Quite the awesome
felt
pilgrim buckle there.
Covered. I like it. It's a natural on you. And then, so then, the first day we got there, we were supposed to be monster hunters going through on the train. So I got this thing that's like goes over your shoulder. It says Zombie Outbreak Team, and it's got like these Molotov cocktail things that you can throw into a zombie horde. And
wait, no. Obviously, you've not read the handbook. You never want to set the zombies on fire.
No.
Why?
Because then they're burning and walking towards you.
Yeah. Zombies don't die
what
when
if
you
they
set
can't
them on
get you?
fire.
What if you're standing on a wall and you throw it into...
No,
generally it's
because
not
in The
good.
Walking Dead, it kills them.
It takes
No, wait.
time.
Does it? I can't remember. Anyway, so and you got a lighter here, so you're never without the ability to start those on fire. And then you got a little stabber.
That's not going to work against
No,
zombies.
but then you got a nice skull axe.
That works.
How
There you go.
How do
That's
they let
good.
you wear that at a con? I guess
They just do.
Teslacon is pretty lax
They
about
just
such
do.
things.
Yeah, Teslacon doesn't seem to care.
Yeah.
And then I got a little pouch with a compass on it for another day. I can't
Nice.
remember. Oh, the outfit I was wearing that day had no pockets. So I was like, fuck, where do I put my phone?
Is that
One day, I hope to have Bill's disposable income
was that made by the
and
leather?
a wife who lets me buy things like that.
What's that?
Was that made by the leather workers that are from the Omaha Council Bluffs area, or is that
No.
from somebody
This
else?
was another guy.
Oh.
That was another guy. In fact, the guy that made this had a booth. He had a lot of cool stuff in his booth, but he also was one of the vendors that put on the big party up on the 10th floor
Oh, the secret
you
party.
have-
Saturday night. Yes, that was awesome.
Do you have his name, or will we be able to put up his information and the podcast?
I have his
later?
card. Yeah, we
Yeah,
can
because
add
that
it.
we should put that for our audience, so that if they would like to purchase and patron this guy, they
Yeah.
can.
It's
And
hard
then
to find a good leatherworker.
I
than you
felt
might
I
think.
needed a flask for something else we were doing. I can't even remember now.
Drinking. It's called drinking. Bill.
Yes, yes.
And what's this component?
It's a little goblet.
Okay. Oh.
That you
okay.
pour
Got it,
your-
got it.
Everything you need to enjoy your brandy.
Well,
Yes.
it looked like something completely different to me for a moment there. I was
Like a holy water.
Yeah.
No,
cup?
more like one of those glass bulbs they used to use to put out fires. They would fill these glass bulbs with this chemical that would explode and smother a fire, and and that was your first fire extinguisher.
I think that
Don't
was,
smash it.
he had to have that one because Audie had one. Something like that.
Oh yeah, Audie and I were trying to be drinking buddies. And then this I got not for
Vampire
anything.
Hunter.
Yeah, at this Teslacon. This is for our steampunk group does a monster hunt in October every year, and I really wanted a vampire hunter
Nice.
ensemble.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I thought this did nicely. And then
Nothing there to set them on fire, though.
no.
See, vampires you can set on fire.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what always works.
Yes. Always works.
Fire cleanses.
But I highly recommend reading Max Brooks' handbook to the surviving the zombie apocalypse. That is the ultimate guide, I would say, to doing
Nice.
the details of your costuming.
Yeah,
for the future.
Max Brooks also wrote World War Z, which is my very favorite
Yep.
zombie.
Huh.
Well, tied for my favorite zombies books.
And he's also the son of Mel Brooks,
I know, the legend.
the legend.
And then the last thing I got was this old antique-looking. It's actually a wine carrier, I think, is what it was meant for.
Probably haunted now.
Probably.
You paid extra for the ghosts, right?
Oh, you always do. So,
Linda, I've got
yeah,
lots
it
of
looks like
sage
it would
if you
hold
need it.
a couple of
Ooh.
wine bottles. So.
That is very nice.
Yeah, so I figured I could use it for something, and the lady who was selling it only wanted like $12 for it or something.
Huh.
Really?
And I'm like, yeah, I can't really turn that down.
See, I see that, and I'm like, that could be like a little mini missile thing.
Well, buy
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
Yeah,
Pop
buy
that
one.
open and have a couple like huge Nerf missiles in there that launch out.
that would be cool.
Or snakes.
Snakes.
If you're like an assassin who kills people with snakes, you're just walking around with that unassumingly, and then you.
Want some wine? Snakes.
Yep.
So yeah, that was my acquisitions. Linda got, I think you got a couple hats, didn't you, Linda? Okay,
Mm-mm.
but you got a couple other things.
I got the hat that you mentioned,
Yeah.
and I got like 4 awesome skirts. That this company called They Make It in France, or They Sew in France, as they sew in France, and it is awesome.
You have secured Jenna's interest.
Oh my God!
I'll have to show Jenna
I
after
will
the show.
Le Couture.
Yeah, the guy. So most of the stuff I got from one single vendor. That other thing I showed you where I ran out of pockets, I got from a different guy. But everything else I got from Da Vinci Scientifica, which has some really awesome stuff.
We'll put their card up too.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, if we can get all those links. So we want to always patron those awesome artisans who are out living the dream.
Right. Yeah, he was a nice guy. At the last day is when I bought the because I was kind of chewing over the vampire thing all weekend. Do I want to spend the money on that? Do I want to get that? And then the guy's
answer's
like,
always yes.
Yeah.
For Bill.
yeah. He's like, how about if I give you a discount? And I said, how much? So he gave me a discount, and so we're signing up. And he goes, I felt I kind of owed you anyway because I think you and your wife put me in the black while we were here. So
Well, that's got to be good.
yeah. So anyway, so it worked
hopefully
out.
he got more than in the black.
Yeah, I'm
You
sure
always-
he did.
You
Yeah,
always hope the vendors and
Yeah.
stuff like that, especially with stuff that's made like that,
right.
get.
It's pretty
they-
high quality stuff.
Yeah.
Da Vinci
Hard,
Scientific,
though.
we bought stuff from them before, and they made
Leather's-
some really cool stuff.
Leather's kind of expensive.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
It's like, so
Winston.
We have the dogs today.
Hi, Bobby.
We
So-
have the puppy dogs, and they want to play with Krampus. Apparently.
Well, they've been very good dogs this year. They
All
don't
right.
have anything to worry about.
So anyway, that was Teslacon. Yeah, we found they've got a bunch of parties up on the 10th floor, is where all the fun, really
we should
fun
be
stuff
keeping that a
happens.
secret, shouldn't we?
We should.
So to wrap up Teslacon, because
Yes.
Bill likes to out and spoil everything, so we won't talk anymore about secret parties.
Right.
Damn it, Bill.
Damn it. Well, it's not really secret. It's
No,
anymore.
it's not.
It's
Just no
only
one had
it's
told
only
you.
no, it's only secret if you don't find out about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So now,
That's the most profound thing you've ever said.
so now
secret
they
if you
wrap
don't
up and they write a
find out
book,
about it.
right, about this Teslacon. That will be a story.
Yes.
Because that's what
well,
they did with
so
all the previous Teslacon.
yeah. So this Teslacon was actually the 10th Teslacon, and it wrapped up this decade of story that's played out over all these different cons. So next year starts a whole new story for the next decade, and it starts with War of the Worlds. And there will be all new villains, all new heroes, and completely new theme. So it should be fun. Next year looks to be really cool.
Excellent.
Yeah. So now, I guess, we can turn to Krampus, to the lighter side of things.
I'm sorry, but Krampus turns to you.
So and we're fortunate enough to have Stu with us again here, who he's our folklore specialist on vampires and all things that go bump in the night, I would say. So he's been looking into a little bit about Krampus for us, and what have you found?
There's a more than I thought I would.
Really?
It is. It's an interesting tradition. Goes back. What impresses me about Krampus and about vampires and about any number of other folk figures is just how adaptable they are and how amorphous they are. I mean, if you've got a purpose that you want this figure to serve, somebody's going to use it. That's the darndest thing. Yeah, that's especially for Christmas. I mean, it's there's an anthropologist back in '75 who did one of the first detailed studies on Krampus. Says this goes back at least to the 16th century, but every valley in Austria had a whole different setup as to who Krampus was and what Krampus did and all the nasty
Different
things he did.
appearances for Krampus, even.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've read from looking into Krampus is that mostly he's used to sort of frighten children into behaving themselves.
Yep.
Because if they don't behave, the Krampus demon comes instead of Santa Claus on Christmas Eve, and he beats you with reeds, throws you in a bag,
Stuffs you into his bag.
right?
Might drown you.
drowns
might
you.
eat you.
Drags your lifeless body to hell,
Could do that.
kind of a thing.
Is there a scale of behavior that determines what Krampus does, or just whatever he feels
If the
like
parent decides that you're worthy of Krampus, then you get Krampus.
Well, I know, but what Krampus's actions? It's like, is it more severe behavior where the child means
Oh
more severe
no,
behavior
they
like
all
Krampus?
get beaten with reeds, stuffed in a sack, taken and drowned, and then dragged to hell.
Or, I mean, maybe you weren't quite as bad. Krampus might, instead of leaving you anything, might give like a bundle of sticks to your parents
To beat
to
you
put
with.
over.
you with.
Yeah,
Ah.
to put over the fireplace so that you know if you don't behave next year, like they're gonna get to beat you for Krampus.
Oh, nice.
That sounds like a pretty good. Sounds pretty good. You know, just
If you say so.
you don't have to buy presents that year. You're just like, this.
I bought this for your parents, for you.
Now, interestingly enough, in some of my research into Krampus, I have come across some pictures that are more of a seductive Krampus.
What?
Yes, where it's a female Krampus in a seductive outfit, and she's spanking naughty men.
What
I
were
could-
you
yeah.
researching on the internet, Bill? I don't.
And
Naughty Krampi
Oh,
are out there.
That's the one that I sent you. Yeah.
Oh,
What?
I didn't even see what you sent me. Yet.
I thought maybe some dark web Krampus is coming.
No, Linda's gonna find it and put it on the feed for
They.
us.
Okay, so
So
was
is Krampus forcing the parents
No,
to beat
no.
the kids at that point, or
No,
is it
Krampus
just...
does it himself for the most
suggestive.
part.
Yeah, it's something to scare the kids with. If you keep being naughty, Krampus is going to come. And I think to answer your question about what's the scale of punishment, I think that's really more according to the parents. If a parent is benevolent, they say if you're naughty on Krampus Day, which ends up being December 5th, the day before
Krampusnacht.
Saint Nicholas. Yeah, Krampusnacht, of course. The day before Saint Nicholas's Day. If you're naughty, Krampus is going to come and he's going to beat you with a willow stick. He's going to or with a birch, with a birch stick. But if the parent is a little less restrained than that, he's going to say, if you're naughty, Krampus is going to come throw you in his bag and haul you off.
Right.
He's going to do a Pied Piper on you, and off you go, my friend.
The thing is about a lot of those postcards, though, that like the more seductive ones that Linda had just had up, is that I guess about the period that they were being created was in urban centers who weren't really familiar at all with what the smaller towns and the villages were doing. All they knew is what the church was spinning, where it was less accepted, and then they created these titillating cards because it was sinful and it was paganism and it was the devil.
Right.
Well, I think they'd have to see this and to get it, you'd have to be familiar at least a little bit, because the funny part, like on my favorite card that I saw, is that the men who are throwing the bag really don't seem to mind all that much.
Right.
They're like clapping. They're like, yeah, all right, Krampus has got this.
He's going to punish
I've
me.
been a very bad boy this year. I've been a very bad boy.
Yeah.
And of course, when he says seductive, these are like Victorian era seductives. These are people who are covered head to toe.
Bit of ankle. Ooh.
Right.
How dare you?
Right.
Do not speak of
And-
body
Well,
parts.
besides,
If
it
I
would
see
seem
an
to me
elbow, I
that
just
if you were getting the kids to behave, you should be sainted.
Sainted? Yes.
saying.
Right.
Well, that's the if I can leave the nerdy for a second and get into the geek. Well, no. Actually, I'm leaving the geek and getting into the nerdy for a second. Mary Douglas has this great book about purity and danger from back in the '60s, where she says whatever enforces your taboo is actually, or your taboo in general, is the most sacred thing you have. Because without the forbidden, without the profane, there is no sacred. So yeah, Krampus, the evil figure who's your enforcer. If you don't do what Krampus doesn't want you to do, or if you don't do the thing that'll provoke Krampus, all that's left over is good kid.
Yeah. Right.
Well, Santa's the carrot, Krampus is the stick.
Yep, quite literally, yes.
So, I mean, speaking of what's sacred to a culture, that's where,
Wacka.
before we started the podcast, I was talking about Frau Perkta.
Oh,
who
yeah.
She's seen as one of the potential origins.
Right.
She had many hats, and one of those hats was the keeper of cultural taboos. Like, she made sure that we followed the traditions, and if you didn't follow the traditions, whether it be spinning or behaving or not eating certain foods on her night, which would happen to fall along the same night as Krampus, then there was punishment.
Well, I mean, if it is your night, it's only fair for people to eat the foods that you want them to eat. This is your party.
Well, it'd be interesting to do a study of that, because you were only supposed to eat meats and fish and some type of grub. Like it
Eat
was
fish and grubs. Yes.
Grubs.
something
Not grubs.
like
Dumb.
that, but you weren't supposed to have sweets.
Mm.
And I'm wondering what it was, because, she was considered the female personification of a wild god of the hunt, and it was elves and fae who were in these wild parties. You were supposed to save sweets and treats and bread for them. And the tradition of if you eat those things that was meant to be offering to the fae, they would come and punish you for that.
And that's interesting, because I'm looking back into like the earliest documented mentions of Krampus. Go back to like the 16th century, and that's the same time. If you've ever read Carl Ginsberg's The Night Battles, where the local Inquisitions keep finding evidence of this cult that meets out in the woods and does things, and they call themselves the Benedante, and they say that as opposed to the Maledante or the bad guys, they say no, we leave our bodies and we fly and we fight the Maledante, and the Maledante want to go spoil food. They want to go spoil wine. They want to go spoil all the nice stuff that you're saying is reserved for the fae and so forth. So I think there's maybe a little bit of an interlock there.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that's because she either, if you were good, she appeared beautiful and white, and a version of Frigga, even, is what they think, or Freya, the Norse gods. But if you were bad, she appeared to be a haggard, horned, hooked-nosed old woman with a big, wide foot that indicated in tradition a shapeshifter of the gods.
Just one big wide foot.
Yeah, just one that would peek out from her skirts and her knife, and she would cut you open, rip out your entrails, and leave straw and rocks and sew you back up.
So the interesting thing to me is that in this country, if kids are bad, they get a lump of coal. Over in Europe, you get beaten with reeds, drowned, dragged to hell,
Put into
or
a
slit
bag.
open, your entrails dragged out.
The coals were still there too, and this isn't just one country. That's what Stu is saying. It's like the Alps. It seems like the mountainous region, the Alps, where everything was so harsh. Like that's where these traditions are growing out of.
Well, so they interesting tie-in with Teslacon is that they had a big Krampus panel at Teslacon, and they also had a Krampus parade in the hotel there one day, and shit, I forgot what my point was.
The Krampus.
It's becoming more well known, I would say.
Oh yeah, that was the
Krampus
thing.
run,
They were
definitely.
talking about the fact that there's all these Krampus parades all over the U.S. now and in the bigger cities, and that it's starting to catch on in popularity everywhere.
What's funny is I don't remember seeing anything about Krampus before 2004. And
Yeah.
it is in 2004 is when Krampus came and invaded the Venture Brothers Christmas special. First time I ever saw it.
When did the Krampus movie come out? The one you were talking about.
That was fairly recent.
The big one was in 2015.
Yep,
Okay.
that one, the American one.
But the weird part is they're just scads of these Krampus direct-to-videos that were coming out starting like 2009.
So
really little productions just everywhere.
the two movies I would recommend to our audience, if they get the chance, see the American one, Krampus, in 2015, because when you look at it, they really kept, and we can talk more about this later, they really kept to the tradition of there's not always a happy ending, which is how the Grimm, because the brothers Grimm were the first to speak of Frau Perkta and some of these Krampus traditions and record them. The other is a Finnish one that's based in Lapland called Rare Exports, and it's actually a pretty funny like horror movie, and it's something that if you want to maybe not if the regular Krampus movie is a little too scary for kids, but you want to show something for that adventurous 14 or up, kid.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. It's a really fun movie.
My wife recommends a book called The Krampus and the Old Dark Christmas: Roots and Rebirth of the Folkloric Devil
Oh, no.
by Al Redenauer.
Who's the publisher?
I don't know.
It's down there someplace.
Someplace.
We'll maybe post the Amazon
Feral
link or
House.
something.
Feral House.
Feral House.
Who are they?
That's a beautiful thing. The fact that there's a publisher in the world that existing called
Called
Feral House.
yes, that publishes things.
Oh,
about
it's spelled
Krampus.
feral, like Feral, not
Yeah.
Farrell.
Yeah,
like a
Feral
cat.
dog.
yeah, nice.
Nice.
Well, that was one of the things that they talked about too at Teslacon, was that a lot of times these stories of Krampus were not only used to get kids to behave, but also to get them to stay around, because in the days when the legend first started, it wasn't modern times, obviously, and if you left the safety of the village or your small farm, you could be killed by wild animals.
Sure.
And so they would use that as, to the kids, telling them, stay around. If you go out in the woods, you'll get gotten by Krampus. And so it was used as a method to keep kids safe until they got old enough to realize that the dangers were out there and old enough to protect themselves.
And not just animals, you have to wonder when it's winter and you're starving and
sure.
maybe your group of people didn't save enough food.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? You're going to go looking for populations to raid.
Yeah, right.
So, when did Krampus did Krampus come up around the same time as the popular myths of Santa Claus, or
It was before.
because
Yeah,
Christianity
they sort of-
basically stole Christmas. So,
Yeah, they sort of come together. How far back does celebrating Saint Nicholas as a winter giver of gifts come? I mean, now because they really do go together. Because Saint Nicholas's Day in Central Europe, you really celebrate, the gift giving is December 6th, not Christmas Day.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's St. Nicholas's Day, and then Krampusnacht is the night before St. Nicholas Day.
The Shadow of St. Nicholas.
Yeah.
Because what it sounded like, because I listened to a few various podcasts and a few websites, is that Krampus was first, and then the church tried to ban it completely, and they're like, no, and it was really the local people who sold Krampus to the church to get them to allow them to continue the traditions of the Krampus, parade, and having the sticks and the traditions and the icons in their homes for this creature.
Yeah, that's the beauty of so many folk figures, is they're so adaptable. Because Krampus goes from being this boogeyman sitting out in the
Or
woods,
boogie woman, depending on the
boogie woman.
location.
Yes.
Because she's known as Frau Pecta, the Christmas witch.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like hashtag feminism.
Let's be honest, a lot of those pagan beliefs were equally, or sometimes even more, feminine in their
Well,
power
I mean,
than masculine.
Yeah, there's a lot of Norse mythology that's kind of influences like the kind of the Santa Claus and a bit of Krampus in there as well. And there's a lot of
because that's coming from up north. Because Saint Nicholas, Santa Claus, that's starting in the Scandinavian countries, and then Krampus. For those of you who are listening at home, I'm gesturing on my hands, of course, with
Towards
left hand.
geographic maps.
Yes.
There.
And then Krampus is starting in Austria and Central Europe, and then Austria took over most of Central Europe, and so then Krampus myth basically spreads from soldiers or people who are coming into Prague to do official business or what have you, out into the areas of Bohemia and southern Germany and Hungary and Croatia and all these places. And then eventually Krampus and Santa meet, and in some formulations Krampus becomes Santa's sidekick.
Or shadow.
Or shadow.
That's what's interesting.
That's a good way to put it. But you've got a good cop, bad cop.
The Shadow of Saint Nick is one of the versions I've heard him called.
I wonder if it's a thing like, Clark Kent and Superman, where it's actually the same guy. And
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Or just, something as well known as God and Satan.
Yeah.
Because there have been an argument by some folklorists and religious scholars that Satan actually isn't bad. He's the shadow of God fulfilling the darker deeds to tempt humanity.
Yeah, if you read the book of Job, God and Satan seem like they're just getting along famously.
Yeah,
Well,
it's a philosophical discussion
Right.
or exchange like partners in a lab.
I mean, Satan isn't actually mentioned for a large portion of the Bible.
Yeah.
Like in Genesis, the popular assumption is the snake is Satan, but it never says that.
No.
It's just a
Right.
snake,
Right.
a talking snake like you do.
Right. I mean, well, how come Krampus did not survive the Kabbalistic conversion? It's like Santa Claus has broke, because the original Christmas didn't involve buying gifts. It involved like spending all year making gifts for people to show that you cared. But now we buy stuff. Is it because you can't buy Krampus Day gifts that it hasn't survived?
Jenna's thinking
you
about
always
Krampus
could.
Day.
Because you have to think of this geographically. Before, relatively recently, Krampus was just a Central European thing. I don't think you've seen Krampus outside of Central Europe until the last 20 years. Like, let's say the first time I've seen Krampus depicted in English was 2004.
And I would think you would need to look at American roots. Puritans wouldn't have touched Krampus with a 10,000-foot pole, because it's just Satan.
Yeah.
That's all it would have been. It would have been reduced to Satanism, and burn her, it's a witch. I mean,
I was just thinking about what Seth was talking about with the Krampus. It'd be more of a Krampus night gift thing, right? But it sort of would put a whole new twist on Black Friday. Right?
There
Right.
we go.
Nicely
Well,
done.
Yeah.
in Austria, I guess a common decor in a house was taking a stick and painting it gold and setting them around the house as reminders to children, you better be good throughout the year, or Krampus is going to use a stick to beat you.
Oh, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, that
That's
was one of the things. Yeah, like
Why the
golden.
painting of the gold?
I don't know. Maybe
Just to make it stand out or something?
Maybe.
Or-
Yeah, I hadn't heard that. What is very interesting, given this idea of the this pagan image of Krampus sort of synergizing with the Christian images. When the fascists take over in Austria in 1934, that's one of the first things they do is they ban any public use of Krampus whatsoever.
Why?
Because fascism in Austria takes on a different character than it does in Germany, where it's very aligned with the church. Austria, Croatia, Spain. Well, Spain, like Franco was very aligned with the church, where it's like, okay, all this pagan stuff, get rid of it. That's not our culture. As opposed to Germany goes, of course, does exactly the opposite, saying anything that is folk is what we want. That's our real identity is the folk identity.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you remove the pagan from Christianity? It's like there's so much in there.
Well, you're thinking quite rationally with that.
Yeah, my bad.
Yeah.
Well,
you just co-opt it.
Like some of the original Santa Claus legends are pretty weird too. Like how he liked leaving, like he would leave money for the prostitutes and revived a bunch of cut up dead children by putting them into a pickle barrel and resurrecting them.
Huh.
I did not know that. That's nasty.
So Santa has a lot more capabilities than he's using.
He can make zombies and
Well, I mean the old saints were weird.
But also, it goes to the flexibility of the motif. I mean, you can.
What is the use? You
can use it for whatever. When you're a creative individual, you can use the motif for whatever you want. A vampire. That's my specialty. The vampires go from this very temporary creature. The vampire is a guy who died a few weeks ago, who we're blaming our disease on. We're going to dig him up, and now we go 300 years later. A vampire is this eternal being who's lived up in the Transylvanian Alps for hundreds of years, and God forbid, in one of the popular films, he's Judas, for crying out loud.
Oh yeah.
He goes back thousands of years. He's thousands of years old vampires, and in one of not Cheryl and Kenyon, but one of the popular novels I've read, they have a vampire who she suspects is not even Homo sapiens. He's like a Homo erectus vampire. He goes back so far.
Well, that was Blade 3.
But that comes up in
Blade 3, where Dracula is actually a whole, not even human. He's a shapeshifter, and it's a whole different Sumerian god, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it goes again from something that could at most be a few weeks old to eternity, because the culture that's using it is using it for a different reason.
I remember from the first show we had you on, vampires more resembled zombies than the vampire of today.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, they were gross.
Now they're sparkly and all kinds of neat stuff.
No, those are not vampires. We will not mention them in this discussion.
You don't like the sparkly vampires?
No, they're not real.
They're not real. There's a line, damn it.
There's a line.
There's a line.
But I mean,
Batman doesn't sparkle.
Now, sorry,
We won't
go ahead.
discuss that either.
our modern understanding of Christmas is very commercialized.
Oh,
yeah.
Hugely.
Like we only think of Christmas through that whole lens, and maybe the war on Christmas, but Christmas wasn't always happy, and it was maybe it was the darkest, coldest time of year.
Sure.
A time of magic, and when the things that go bump in the night, because the night is so much longer, so much more threatening, especially when you have
so
very
much
little
colder.
very little food. You're hoping, you're getting up every day to thaw your water just to drink.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of these places, it's just everything is a chore just to survive.
Yeah, I mean, people didn't really wouldn't just naturally come up with these happy things at the dawn of some of these things that Christmas took over,
or they're forcing themselves to be happy. I've always wondered, why the hell would anybody celebrate winter solstice, for God's sake? And then somebody brings it up to me and said, "You understand? This is the longest night of the year. We've made it. We can make it through this. We can make it through anything."
Yeah, because the days are starting to get longer. There's hope for the future. You can see the sun coming back.
Sol
moving
Invictus.
north. Yeah.
Bring it back.
Set a big fire, drink, and have lots of sex.
Yeah.
Basically, I mean, you put that way nicer than I would have, but yeah.
Yeah. Now, one of the interesting.
How would you have put it, Jenna?
Yeah, indeed,
Hold on.
I am curious.
Yeah.
Drink and fuck. I mean, it's drink, dance, and fuck.
So we're just looking at the clear rating in the rearview mirror now.
That's been since the first show you asked me to be
it's
on.
gone.
I think.
Well, listen. So
I think that disappeared on Wesley getting the
Time
time van.
episode. Yeah. One of the things that they talked about at Teslacon in the Krampus panel was that you see on YouTube a lot of these videos of these Krampusnacht parades that happen in the Alps in Germany and all those regions over there. And when you look at it, I mean, it looks pretty horrifying. These costumes that they have and these demonic masks with horns, and a lot of these, they're coming up to these kids, and a lot of the kids are bawling their heads off because they're traumatized by this whole thing. Now, the thing that was really interesting is that there are some places, some
But did
towns,
they die?
The kids? No.
That's
Yeah. No.
But did they die, Bill?
They did not
Did
die
they die?
in that parade. But interestingly, there are some towns that have Krampus parades. They do not allow any videoing or recording of any kind, and it is a bloody affair.
That's
And they're
Who's
not
blood?
the people that are in the parade, as well as bystanders, they're hit with clubs, and I mean
The
it is
chains.
yes, chains, and I mean
Switches.
it is a horribly bloody affair, and that's why
I
they
can't
won't
seem to
allow
find
it
a
to be
video
videoed.
of that one.
No, you won't.
It's not even Black Friday, is it?
Yeah, no.
That's
Yeah,
hardcore.
they said it. Yeah, they said it's very dark and very hardcore, and
I want to see some documentation because that almost sounds more like
Urban
one of these-
legend.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
an
yeah.
urban
Yeah,
legend,
like the
Yeah.
cities and the churches, like you know.
Yeah,
Someone has to have
Well,
the
this guy
lesson
that was
here?
talking
Pixar
about
What are
it,
they
didn't
supposed to
happen.
learn from that? I mean,
I think it's more. There's no learning from it. I think it's more of just a like a Girls Gone Wild kind of a night.
Krampus Gone Wild?
Yes, where you know
Throw
it's
me your
just-
horns.
It's just
there's
people
the name of the
drinking
show
and
right
just
there.
going.
Krampus Gone Wild.
Oh, there we
Crazy.
go.
Yeah.
But I would argue there is a point to that. I mean, especially now in modern times more than anything. In most first world countries, a lot of people are living very softly.
Yeah,
They go to the grocery store, they get their food. They're not worried about every day that something's going to eat them or kill them or, you know, rape them. Not everybody, but a lot of places.
Right.
Generally, people have it good.
Mhm.
And almost by recalling to these traditions, are you kind of reminding people that violence exists,
right.
the world is brutal, and
Then
you're
don't
kind of a
trust your
soft
neighbor.
flesh bag.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's that visceral getting it out, kind of like having Carnival right before we start Lent.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like we're gonna do everything that we can't do. just
Show
to
all the
get it out,
things.
and boom.
right.
Because God forgives us. He gets it. God gets
It
it.
almost reminds me of that Star Trek episode, "Are You of the Body, Landru?" when they have
Landru,
the
yeah.
what was it called, the festival or something
Yeah.
that they have, and it's
Festival.
like 24 hours of just
The Purge.
raping and pillaging and smashing and
It was the Purge before the Purge. It's like that.
And
that
then-
was an interesting concept.
Pre-purging?
Pre-purge.
yeah, and then
But if
right
you-
after that
yeah,
it's back.
But if you knew your neighbors had dressed up in
Those outfits,
those outfits and covered themselves with blood or whatever, you're not going to steal their apples.
No.
no,
That
right,
is a very good point.
right. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting legend.
Yeah. Well,
Assuming it's a legend.
I mean, there. Like I said,
It could be.
I mean,
Christmas-
there are still some countries, especially in Northern Europe, that believe that trolls
Yeah.
and
Creatures
fairies,
such
the
as that.
fae, still exist.
Well, they'll divert roads
Yes.
to avoid ferrymen.
And that's what
Oh,
I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking of. Like
Yeah.
the government who is building their road will divert a road, even though
Right.
it's more money, because they find a quote unquote fairy stone.
Uh,
So it's
Huh.
and I knew a guy who did a lot of business up in Norway, and he was sitting out in a business partner's country lodge, and they were looking down. And the business partner said, like there are still trolls out there. Like if I wouldn't let you go down there because we believe that they still come bump in the night.
interesting.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, there's one of the first cemetery tours that I took had these. It actually kind of hurts my heart because people would build families would endow these cemeteries to build these resting chairs where you could sit and rest while you were mourning at someone's grave. And now the folklore around them is, when you sit in this chair, you're going to be dead within 6 months. Because they've built that up just to build a taboo. And you go on tours with folks, and these are modern folks because they all got their phones out, living in the 21st century.
And they still believe
they
that.
will not sit in that chair. Boy,
Yeah, in the Victorian days, cemeteries were used as parks.
Oh yes.
People would go there and have
you'd
picnics.
picnic in the cemetery.
Yeah.
Well, that's still Dia de los Muertos. I mean, you go and you sit and you dine with the dead, and they come to visit you, and it's the a way of honoring your family.
Is it basically this a kickback against the secularization of the world, of the mundane becoming more prevalent than the sacred, and people are like, to not sit in the chair is to acknowledge that the world's a bigger place than I can actually see. The empirical doesn't own me.
Yeah, that I can touch something that is more mysterious, that has some real profundity.
Yeah, and makes a otherwise manifested, boring, mundane place mystical.
Well, and if you believe in that sort of thing, it makes it easier to believe in an afterlife and spirits, and that you'll see your lost loved ones again, and that whole religious aspect of life.
Oh, well, that is cool.
Yeah, that's scary because I know my old relatives would come to me as Krampus.
Your old relatives, the ones that are dead, they
Grandpa
come back
Krampus.
as
Yeah. That is scary.
Did you have some violent?
I'm just saying. That's
No?
just
Grandpa and Krampma.
Grandpa.
Whack.
But it's hard.
Into the bag with you.
Into the bag.
What's interesting though is, like Stu said, like there's so many different versions, probably depended on what side of the mountain you were on, what resources you had, probably
Sure.
impacted the severity of the figure itself, and how they negotiated. Like, there was probably some Catholic, or not necessarily Catholic, even though it was probably predominantly, there were some priests who were like, no Krampus at all, and so I'm like, okay, as long as you're still coming to church every Sunday, I don't care what you're still doing.
Yeah.
I mean, just that negotiation, and that's over time what caused these variations.
Oh yeah. And folk religion is just fascinating, because you have people, praying to these patron saints, and it's like, give us for everything, for rain and for all this intercession. But you go up to the Reformation era. This is what I love, is occasionally if the saint didn't come through, then you would see people like, hanging the saint in effigy, like, I'll show you so and so. Which I mean, today you wouldn't even. Our theology is to the point, our conception. I can't say that would ever happen, but in a world that was a little more tied into the supernatural, oh yeah, they'd get very upset with saints. Oh yeah, I've heard of people heckling priests in church. Also, that's what's hilarious. They don't hold the host up high enough. They're hold up higher for us in the back. We want to see it. It's a different relationship. It's a more visceral thing going on.
Boy, that'd be fun to heckle the priest.
Oh, it'd be hilarious.
I could see Charles doing that easily.
Charles just got a new life goal.
But heckling them sincerely, though. I mean, not going in as an atheist saying, like, this is all BS. No, like, actually saying, like, you missed a spot. You didn't hit me with the holy water.
That sounds really hard, considering that around that time the Mass was in Latin, and people can't actually speak Latin that day. So,
well, they couldn't understand the words, but they can understand the gestures.
Just from rote, from every day.
Yes, well, they know what's happening when the priest holds up the host to say that this has just become the body of Christ, and if he hadn't holding up high enough, damn it, we want to see it back here.
Now I'm visualizing the crowd that wanted to burn the witch in Monty Python, the Holy Grail.
Yes.
It's like she's a witch. Hold the host up higher.
It's the same crew.
Right.
Turn me into a newt.
I thought
Got better.
Now, do you think something like a Krampus parade would go over big here in Omaha?
Probably not.
Well, actually, I think that it might. If it was publicized properly.
I wonder if it would be, the churches would be opposed to it as some sort of satanic celebration versus, I mean, I'm sure there would be
I can't.
individuals like that
They
would
we
be
have
that
the
way.
zombie walks and all that.
Yeah, true.
I think we're past that.
Yeah.
Well, I think it would be regarded as part of the war on Christmas and be featured on Fox News as such.
Well,
Don't give him any
Yeah,
ideas.
no, this you see that's just making me want to do it.
Someone's got to
yeah.
give them some ideas.
I want to somehow start a movement
Krampusnacht.
out there to redefine Black Friday.
The only problem is, like, being the U.S.,
Yeah.
someone's going to take it, like, and actually hit someone or something,
Yeah, right.
and there's not going to be a waiver signed, and someone's going to cry, and someone's going to get on the news and cry, and I
There'll
was
be
hit, and these
lawsuits.
bunch
That's
of
our
heathens.
that's our opportunity to come and beat them, shove them into a bag.
and drown them in the river?
Exactly.
Yeah, Jenna-
That's the true spirit of Krampusnacht.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Jenna's got a point, though. It's kind of like BDSM practice, where you have to learn just exactly how far you can go without really doing someone serious damage. You know, people who've done Krampusnacht parades for generations, they know how you can beat somebody with a birch rod and not really hurt them.
Or a horsetail whip.
Yeah, you get somebody from.
That was a common tool. Don't look at me like that. That's what the document said.
Just looking on Wikipedia, eh, Jenna?
No, that one wouldn't be.
I'm seeing Jen in a whole new light.
It's taking you this long.
I've known this for years.
No, you get somebody in Cleveland never been to a Krampusnacht parade before.
Yeah.
They're gonna do. They might do some. They might put a ball bat in the middle of the birch rods to stabilize it, and boom, and you got a problem because if you
Yeah.
don't know how to do it safely. I mean,
Or
I
can-
think of how many things that we do to celebrate holidays that if you don't do them right, you could really have some issues.
Like, I don't think you can have a Krampus parade in an open carry state.
No,
Oh,
no.
Or
that-
even a concealed carry state. I don't think you could
Well,
do
we're a
Krampus.
concealed carry state.
Yeah, so that's a good
So you don't
reason why
think
we
it-
don't. Because if you hit someone as dressed as Krampus and
With
you did
your
not have
switch.
explicit permission and they shoot you, I think legally they're safe.
Oh, I was thinking that people would be. You were talking about people shooting at just like wandering
demons.
Krampus.
No,
Wandering
no.
Krampi.
Wandering Krampi.
I'm just saying you don't. There are people who legally that would be their argument in their head. I'm not saying they're right.
Well, but I think if you had a parade, it would be no different than like a zombie parade.
yeah.
Where the zombies come at you and try to get
Except you're not beating people as zombies.
you. Well, people in
biting
the
them.
parades wouldn't be physically
No,
beating
because
people
I think
either.
there are
in
explicit
this
instructions for
country.
zombie parades.
No.
Like, I've known people who've done zombie walks, and there's explicit instructions for the group so that they don't create an issue that will not allow them to have it the following year.
We don't actually eat anyone's brain.
Right.
What?
All
people have to
brains
be
are going to
told.
stay exactly where they started.
I mean, I think if you had a Krampus parade here, you would have to have that as a
Yeah.
rule: no touching or hitting of
Yeah.
anybody, whether they're in the parade, watching the parade.
Or you'd have to set up, like,
Protesting
here's the yellow line of the parade route.
Yeah.
If you, as the person, crosses this line,
Here's your list.
you're like free. It's free game,
Here's your list
and
of
you have that
sanctions.
posted so many feet.
Oh, I forgot. to
People-
Cross this line,
No.
it's free game.
Yeah, I don't see how having a Krampus parade does not promote child abuse.
Well, what's the problem with that?
Here's your list.
Galactic Driftwood's official position is we do not approve of child abuse.
This comes out of a culture where it was assumed that you would be you'd be using corporal punishment.
Yeah.
You'd have to have official safe words.
With your
Children?
Well, because otherwise you don't know.
I'm sorry.
I'm
starting to
comfortable with
see-
this conversation
I'm starting to
anymore.
see Charles in a whole new light now.
Well, I'm just saying because if you
I'm
have,
six. I'm using that safe
if
word
you
every
have
chance
one
I
person, if you have one person in public using the
Peanut butter,
switch
peanut
steely on another person, you need
a
you
safe
need,
word.
you
Yeah,
need
but
to have an
teach a
official
fi-
safe
you know,
word
if you
so that
make
the
the
neighbors.
Safe
Yeah.
word gazelle shaft and
Gazelle shaft.
It's like I can't say that. I can't. Say that.
Actually, now that I think of it, we did have a safe word back in my house.
Yeah.
I can't breathe. If you ever had
Right.
siblings, that's
Right.
exactly it.
Yeah.
Like, your brother calls you a butthole or
Yeah.
what have you, and you take one step toward him. It's like, I can't breathe. Yeah, it's like, they learn that real fast. That they say that
Right.
that you'll stop. And they're like, I can't breathe.
In my house, it didn't stop us. That's why my siblings are a little brain damaged.
I still don't. I've heard your stories, and I don't know how you're not in prison. Krampus should have come for you a long time ago.
That's how we know Krampus isn't real.
That's
Bill
right.
is still walking among us.
That's right. I haven't been dragged to hell yet.
It would be a heck of a job. Honest to goodness, what you'd have to do those. You'd have to have the beaters be part of the parade. I mean, you couldn't have like Krampus walking down and beating people in general. You'd have to have official beaters and BDs, and make it clear to the audience that you're not. Much more like a haunted house. I would think.
Yeah.
Actually, it is what I think, where you have the rules like you don't touch
Well, wait a minute.
monsters.
Here's a
Don't do
thought.
that.
What if we did something like a running of the Krampi, similar to the running of the bulls in Spain, where people that are willing to take a chance of being beaten by
Gored
Krampus.
by a Krampus. Yeah.
Well, if anyone wants to go create a Krampus parade, then create rules, establish boundaries, make sure they're well published.
Including the
Every
safe
so
words.
many feet along the
Just
parade
kinda
route.
like a gauntlet of
Yeah.
Krampi.
Yeah, or maybe the Krampi chase you, and as long as you
Or-
can outrun them.
You need parental permission to take the children and put them in bags and carry them for like
Yeah.
a block.
Yes.
Just
Or
a,
maybe the parents can sign the kids up for the
Yeah,
running of
that's
the
what I was
Krampi.
thinking.
Yes.
You've been bad this year. No
No.
Santa, just Krampus.
Right.
Every word you guys say makes that consent form longer. There's just more of this guy in there.
you're
It is
going to
interesting,
give
though.
Fox News everything they
Everything
need to
they
show
want, yeah.
that the war on Christmas is real, and that a new satanic cult has risen in the
Yes,
Midwest.
cult
and-
Right.
But isn't aren't we just celebrating Christmas more? I mean, the war on Christmas to me is saying banish Christmas. We don't say Christmas. We don't talk about Christmas. We're talking about it more. We're bringing in these
Right.
traditional.
Yeah, we're
know.
even
Christmas
more
stuff.
concerned. We're
Yeah.
Trust
bringing
me.
back the old stuff.
The German inside of me is like a little tickled by all this. Let me tell you. So
All right.
I
Janice
mean,
had the
Odin was
Krampus-
here before all you
Krampus committee.
Johnny-come-lately Christians.
It would be interesting. I'm just thinking about the different temperaments of children. I mean, because there are some kids who would just cry and scream for that sort of thing. I had a niece, when she was 2-3 years old, would have been. You just said, okay, you're gonna run down here, and this guy with horns on his head is gonna scoop you up and throw you in a bag. She'd be like, cool.
Yeah.
Would have been all about that.
Right.
I've got a cousin who 100% would have punched Krampus right in the nuts.
That's why they always wear metal cups.
No, I don't have anything to say about
I
that.
thought you were. John looked like he was going to interject there for a minute.
Well, at several points. It's like, but nah, I'm just going.
That used to happen to people. I know of someone. Well, Bill Lee, the pitcher for the Red Sox.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he dressed up like Darth Vader for an event, back in the 70s, that happened to him all the time.
Oh.
Yeah, the kids would go right for the testicles. On Darth, just bam every time.
We were at the Air and Space Museum yesterday, and it was the stormtroopers were escorting Santa into the Air and Space Museum, so it was just loaded with kids, and they were giving out these free little, lightsabers that you flick it and it extends out, and so the kids were running. So Lynn and I were there, and there were some other Jedis there. Well, every kid that came around wanted to battle you with their little fold-up thing, and they'd flick the thing, and I'd always make sure that they weren't flicking it right into my groin.
That would have made episode 3 a very different movie.
It would have.
When
It would
Anakin
have.
came to kill the younglings, they were all like, "Go for the junk!" And then they
they just force project their light. That's where they fucked up. They should have force projected all their lightsabers at once at Anakin.
You
Yes.
think if we send an email to George Lucas, he can change it?
that scene was just like 12, 10-year-olds just like kicking Anakin while he's down.
That would be awesome.
Like, no, I'm dark and evil and emo. Oh.
That would be awesome. I would like that.
But I see what you're saying, because some of the kids there, I would go up to them and I would say, do you lean to the light side or the dark side of the Force? Most of them said the light side. And the parents would always go, like this. But there were a couple of kids that Dark side, dark side.
And then there was just that one kid who went.
Well, you've seen the video of that kid. There was an event at one of the theme parks where you get to battle Darth Vader. It's like the last stage in your thing. And this kid, they give him a lightsaber to battle Darth Vader, and so he puts it down and kneels before Vader and says,
So, I mean, we've said this multiple times during the podcast that like legends and are so important to, you know, understanding different behaviors and taboos of a culture and, you know, enforcing certain behaviors. And what I think about, because I don't know as much about the historical Brothers Grimm, but I think what they did in their time, like trying to go around and collect these stories, we really have to appreciate now, because you think about how much would have been lost had it not been for them making this point to go out and collect these stories.
Real Grimm's fairy tales are awful.
Yeah.
There's a point. No, the true Grimm's
yeah.
fairy tales, like the true story of Sleeping Beauty. She didn't actually wake up. The prince got pissed off. He rapes her, and then the sun and the moon or like the moon comes from it. There's twins. Like that's one version.
Yeah. He rapes her. He rapes her, and he leaves. Then she has children, and one of the babies trying to suckle from the mother comes up and sucks the poison thorn that's put her to sleep out of her finger, and that's how she wakes up.
Huh.
In one of the Grimm versions. I mean,
That would be an awful way to wake up.
Yeah, the Snow White, the stepmother was forced to put on burning iron shoes and dance until her feet were bloody and rotten.
Huh.
Like the stories were way darker to enforce behaviors.
I mean, we've got horror movies now. They had their own stories then.
Yeah.
So they had like the Prince was like Cosby.
Ooh, dark and
Thanks.
topical. Dark and topical.
There's an interesting tale about this fellow who made a deal with the devil, and he wasn't going to bathe for 3 years, but the devil gave him all these enchantments, all these ways he could help people if he wanted to. And so he helped this man who's in dire straits, and he said, "I'll let you marry one of my daughters." And he shows up, and he's horribly hairy and smelly, and he's like, "Oh, I'll clean out public lavatories," and he's just like the worst guy in the world. But and the first two daughters like, "I want no part of this guy. I want no part of this guy, regardless of what he's done for save my father's life here." But the third daughter is like, "No, yes, I will take him for my husband. I feel that devotion." And then, of course, at the end of the 3 years, and before his wedding, he gets cleaned up, and he's this beautiful, rich, handsome prince. And so the daughter marries him, and the two older daughters commit suicide. And then Satan shows up, and the guy says, "Yeah, and the prince says, 'Hey, I won. I made the 3 years without bathing or doing anything nice for myself.' He says, 'No, I won. If you'd bathed or something, I would have gotten one soul. Instead, I got two.'"
Oh wow!
Like, whoa! When I read that last line, I was like, "Oh man, Brothers Grimm got a little hardcore on me there."
Interesting.
I mean, like that's ascribing the fault of the two daughters to the guy, though. I think it might have been safe to say that those souls were going to Satan anyway.
You think?
Yeah.
You think because if he had bathed him and cleaned up, the first woman would have probably have married him, and she'd still be living
no,
today.
because if they're the type of people who
Shallow.
Yeah, if they're the type of people who kill themselves when they realize that their sister married the prince,
Yeah.
that they were hellbound anyway. Let's be honest.
Possibly. But you give them.
That's
give
just
another
the
50
devil being a sore loser.
You give another 50 years to reform, then maybe they make it.
Right. And maybe the love of the prince changes their life and their entire outlook.
Yeah.
What's that?
Linda's like,
But I mean, kind of going back to other folklore and Christmas, Krampus isn't the only Christmas monster.
yeah.
What are some
There's
others?
some other Christmas monsters.
Frau Perchta, we heard.
Frau Perchta, the
Frau
Christmas witch.
Perchta. I am not going to be able to say this right. Maybe you know a bit more how to.
Nope.
Okay, so Jola Koturin. Koturin?
Yola Koturin. Is that
Yola
Finnish?
Yeah, Icelandic.
Icelandic. Okay.
A huge and vicious cat said to lurk in the snowy countryside during Christmas time and eat people who have not received any new clothes to wear before Christmas Eve.
Sounds like a Finnish. Sounds like one of those like forest cats that you think Pixel
Great
is.
big black cat.
Yeah.
So that's where you actually want your grandmother to send you some clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Socks.
So-
Oh my God, that's why they send you socks for Christmas.
That could
So,
be.
so is that the counter argument? Is saying like instead of like if you're not good, Krampus will get you. This is the kid says, oh yeah, well if you don't get me new clothes, then this devil cat from Iceland is going to disembowel me here.
The fashion
Eat
cat
you,
will come
yes.
for you.
Yes.
There's Bell's Nickel, who...
Oh, yeah, that was talked about at Teslacon. I can't. Bell's Nickel. I can't remember what he did, but
He comes to children sometimes before Christmas wearing tattered old clothing and raggedy fur. He carries a switch to frighten children and candy to reward them for good behavior.
that's right.
Where, yeah, does
Looks
he have
like he
his?
has a
Does he
credit
have a
card.
windowless van somewhere too? This guy sounds.
There's
There he is.
Hans Trop, who's an anti-Santa who hands out punishment
Anti-Santa.
who hands out punishment to bad children, and
So if he and Santa were to meet, they would mutually annihilate one another.
yeah.
Rip a black hole in space-time.
Yes.
But then there's Père Fouettard, whose name translates to Father Whipper.
Father Whipper.
Well, it's like Frau Perkta, one of her other incarnations, she would punish the girls who didn't do their lot of spinning. Like, she was known as the spinning lady. And if you didn't do the spinning that you were supposed to do, she might beat you and eat you then. Or she would set fire to what you had spun, even though you didn't finish it during the 12 days.
Huh.
And you have to wonder if that's part of...
Rumpelstiltskin sounds like to me.
Yeah, or even you need to do your spinning because we have to finish the weaving before it gets cold, and if we don't finish the weaving, then
Right.
we're not going to stay warm. Like
Right,
that
right.
kind of
Huh.
that practical
Right.
nugget
Aspect.
of truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole list of monsters, though, and a lot of them kidnap, cook, and eat children who misbehave or are bad in some way.
That's what we're missing in this day and age. There's not enough cooking and eating of children.
Yeah, there's not enough traumatizing of
Right.
young people. That's yeah, we're the psychology.
All the trauma comes through social media these days.
I remember-
and that is interesting. That's the other thing I saw looking at this historically in 1953. This very Freudian psychiatrist in Austria, who was part of the Kinder movement, you know, for child health and welfare, the Austrian government puts out this pamphlet in 1953 saying, you know, Krampus is an evil man. Don't believe in don't do the Krampus thing anymore. It's traumatizing your poor kids. So you have this again, same as the fascists did, trying to say the government saying, don't dispense with Krampus.
Right.
Don't do that. It's not good for the children to be beaten.
Right.
Bad habit.
We're terrified.
Well, so we've put out some great suggestions. See Rare Exports, see Krampus, and read, what was the book again, Seth?
Let's see. The book was...
Little help from the peanut gallery.
It's not loading.
Art of the Deal by Krampus.
From Feral Press.
The book is called The Krampus and the Old Dark Christmas by Al Ridenauer.
Awesome.
Krampus and the Old Dark Christmas.
But if I can throw something out,
Sure. Like a baby in a bag.
well, because there's a flip side, and I'm not saying I'm going to pro traumatic Krampus children, whatever, but this came to me as watching that Mr. Rogers documentary. I remember hating Mr. Rogers when I was a kid, right? And it took me till I was an adult to go, well, every time I turned him on, he told me I was going to die or something, you know.
What?
What?
He does. He goes to some dark places, right? So revisit. Well, so
I don't know about
so I've been since I've been involved with some kids, and like Netflix and they have kids shows. There is no representation of death or consequences.
In the
The
kids'
dark-
show.
Nobody
consequences.
goes to jail. Nothing happens. Whereas when I was a kid, I went. I mean, the Terminator. You know, I saw people death. All right, and whether or not I understood it, it was there for a conversation.
Is the Terminator a child's movie?
Yeah.
No, I snuck in. Or whatever.
No,
But Mr. Rogers is the same. I mean,
I'll give you an example. There's this one of the Warner Brothers movies, cartoons is called Cheese Chasers, and it's one of these things I hadn't thought of in years, and suddenly it hits me like, my God, this was a kid's show.
Well, think of the Black Cauldron.
Or Star
Well,
Blazers.
Or Disney's. Disney had some really dark films that they've tried to distance themselves from.
Fantasia's Night on Bald Mountain.
Well,
Yes.
no, Cheese Chasers is darker than that. This is an 8-minute Warner Brothers cartoon. They have these two mice, and they get loose in their nirvana. They get to this cheese factory. They eat cheese all night. And the next morning, they're like laying back on, oh, I had so much. I'll never be able to eat cheese again. And the other one says, oh, I'll never be able to eat cheese again either. And they look at each other and say, then what is there left to live for? And the rest of the cartoon are these two mice trying to commit suicide.
Oh!
For laughs.
In comedic ways?
Yeah, well, they just walk up to the cat.
Oh.
They pry open the mouth, and they just step right in. Cat wakes up and like, what the heck is going on? And he gags them out, and they keep trying to get the cat to eat them. And then the cat's like, this is just wrong.
But like,
That does sound very Warner
the
Brothers.
cartoon for
Too
Watership
easy.
Down. Like, there was, or The Secret of Nim. Like, all of the, Charlotte's Web even.
Yeah.
There's death
Oh,
in
yeah.
Charlotte's Web.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wilbur's got he's got the axe right to his neck.
Yeah,
He
and
really
Charlotte
taken it
has
out.
babies and dies.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
You guys are ruining my childhood.
So, it's, there's,
Out of kindness, they did not show the children of Charlotte eating her.
fact.
Yeah.
So it's it's you have to wonder, like, it's that balance. We seem to be a period of going too far one way, of being a little too soft with our content. Except for Up. I think everyone got
Woof.
the reality of Woof. Of Up.
Gosh.
But and then there was the other side. So maybe that's why Krampus is getting so popular. Maybe there's this little internal unconscious urge by society to
Toughen up.
remind the things go bump in the night.
Yeah, there's some sugar and salt. For every good, without evil, there can be no good. You know, without some kind of menace, without salt, there can be no sugar. Without some kind of menace, without the taboo, there can be no sacred.
Who are the Jedi without the Sith?
Right.
So without the coyote running into walls and falling off the cliffs, there is no balance in the Force.
You're mixing the metaphor a little bit more than I would have, but
Well, we'll let the audience decide. Maybe
Right.
if they want to tell us in their comments and things like this podcast what their thoughts are on the Krampus. Maybe they have some other Krampus books or movies they want to share for us and the rest of our viewers, and let us know what you think.
Yep. And like and subscribe and
yeah, leave us a review on iTunes. I want to see a few iTunes reviews. If somebody leaves us an iTunes review, a good one, I think we should read it out on the show.
yes.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
I concur.
We will get Jenna to dance on the table.
What?
So considering
I don't think any of anyone.
Well, if it gets a review.
there may or may not be evidence of me doing this in the past, so I can't like.
Jenna, I've seen your Facebook.
It was a Greek restaurant. It was tradition.
Well, I'm not saying it was bad. There's nothing wrong with
How
it.
do you
Good
explain
shit.
PlanetCon last year?
There was no dancing on the table, and
There's no pictures of it. But yes.
All right. Well, anyway,
Okay, so
thank you
we-
all for tuning in. And next time we're going to be talking about the new Star Wars movie because I think it will have already been out by the time we do our next podcast. If you can believe that.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about the new Star Wars movie and The Mandalorian.
Yes.
Oh, gracious Moses.
Yeah. A lot of good stuff there. So, anyway, thank you all. We will see you next time. Have a good week. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Galactic Driftwood Podcast. For more information and past episodes, please visit our website at galacticdriftwood.space or subscribe to us on YouTube. And now, Please deactivate your cranial downlinks, collect your towels, and be sure to watch your step as you exit our gravity well.